Hey guys, welcome back to another video in this channel. Today we're gonna continue with the death ring that we were working on. So yeah, I don't really have an announcement. Oh, actually I do have an announcement. I was gonna say I don't have an announcement, but there's a couple of things. So good news and bad news. The good news is that we're gonna have one extra day to submit your portfolio. So if you are watching this video right now, that means that you probably can still submit your portfolio for this weekend's like whole thing. The bad news is that I'm gonna have to leave town earlier than expected. So the next video for this ring and the next no, actually no, I think I'm gonna be able to like pre-record this one, but the portfolio videos I'm gonna have to record them on the place to where I'm going to go. So the quality of the audio and video might not be the best for our portfolio reviews, but I don't want to let you guys hanging. So yeah, let's just keep working on this guy right here. And by the way, thank you to everyone on the comments. You guys are super kind. Every time we upload like new stuff, and especially stuff that you guys respond to, like this one, I always get a lot of encouraging messages to become like a really good YouTube channel. But the only way to do it, it's not only with my like with the things that I create, it's also with your support, guys. So if you of course like, share, subscribe, and do all the stuff that gives us more what's the word, more exposure, that's gonna help the channel grow. So thank you very much for the engagement, for everything. So here what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna start adding a little bit more volume here on the upper side of the sculpt, because I thought is looking a little bit too like flat. So let me just, I feel like I'm too far away from where I usually work. There we go. So yeah, let's work on the bandages a little bit here, because as you can see, this looks just like blobs of clay. And even though a like jewel maker would be able to move them a little bit more, we definitely need to change them. So I'm gonna go into my geometry option, and I'm gonna change. Oh, someone in the comments mentioned to keep this thing like the Karnak thing, so that you can see the alt and all of the keystrokes. There we go. So down here in the corner, the shortcuts. So I'm gonna go into Dynamesh, and I'm gonna turn on groups, and I'm gonna go to polygroups, and I'm gonna say auto groups. And what that should do, it should give one unique polygroup to each part of the elements. So when I Dynamesh right now, as you can see, they do not mix. They remain as separate pieces. I'm gonna increase the resolution. Let's Dynamesh. Does it work? Geometry. There we go. There we go. So, and yeah, we're gonna start sculpting. Now, these are gonna be like sculpted bandages, of course. Let me start with this one. I'm gonna mask it, invert the mask, and that way I can only work on this one. So I'm gonna give it like a little bit of a border. Now I'm gonna go over a little, kind of like a cartoonish style. If you guys have seen like League of Legends and stuff, kind of like a stylized effect. World of Warcraft, you know, that kind of stuff. So I'm just gonna start giving it the bandage border. Now, for instance, here I'm gonna start carving in a little bit of volume, so that it doesn't look like a blob, and it looks kind of like with thickness, but with less thickness, right? We can even start adding some sort of effects right there. Oh, having some issues there with the masking. That's fine. It's gonna kind of like give it the sort of like a bandagey effect. Another thing we could do, I think I'm actually gonna do it. I think it's gonna be easier. I'm just gonna go into subtool. I'm gonna say split, groups split, and that way we're gonna get one subtool per each bandage, and that way we won't have any sort of like issues here. For instance, that one, I'm just gonna push it in so we can more easily carve onto this thing right here. And again, I want to have this sort of like tatered, like damaged bandage. Now, I am thinking about 3D printing this. Let me know in the comments if you guys want to see a little bit of that. So we are going to 3D print it, and that's why I'm not making this super thin. Because when you 3D print something, you do need to keep a little bit of volume. Otherwise, it becomes really difficult to both to print and to hold the shape, right? I don't think I've told you guys this, but I've been working with a client for the past like 6-7 months, I think, and she makes jewels. So I provide her with like the 3D models, and she converts them into actual jewelry. Very cool. I've done like 2 or 3 of those little guys for her. Really cool products as well. Really unique things. Unfortunately, I don't think I can show them, but I'm gonna ask her if she allows me to to show some of that, then I'll show it. There we go. So that looks a lot nicer. Let's go to another one. Again, I'm using my Damien Standard here to sort of give it this sort of like a clothy effect. And then clay build up to chip away. So, yeah. So it reads. The important thing here is that we need to make sure that it reads like it's cloth, right? And it can be tricky. It can definitely be tricky, especially because we're working with clay, and clay it's not like super thin. So we need to make sure that we kind of make it read as close as possible to like cloth straps. So that's why I'm adding this sort of like wrinkles and stuff. Now I'm also thinking about like how to make it like how to differentiate itself, like separate itself, like make it look different from the gold ring. Because I do want the ring to be made out of gold, and I thought, hey, what if the bandages are made out of silver, right? And actually, one thing we can do is I can already go here and we can select one of like the gold material. Then I'm gonna say color, make sure the mRGB is set on, color, fill object, and then we can go here to the bandages and let's change this to like a gray material. I don't want to go chrome. I'm gonna go like this matte cap. There we go. That one's a little bit closer to what I'm expecting. I'm going to say color, fill object, and then we need to go to the other bandages, color, fill object, color, fill object. There we go. Let's go to the jaw, grab the gold again, color, fill object. And that way we can kind of see how this thing's going to look at the end. So that way it's going to be a little bit easier to understand that these things are gold. Now, if you don't want to see it for now, you can just go here and press shift and click on the little brush icon, and that's going to delete all of the material and color information. So we can continue working on the sculpture here. And then if we want to just like preview things, just like turn it on and off. I don't recommend working with materials all the time because materials can be deceiving. You might see or not see things that are on your sculpture. Might make it a little bit difficult to work. There we go. Now I'm gonna disable Dynamesh and I'm gonna give it a couple of subdivision levels, probably just one for now, because now with one extra subdivision level should be able to get like some nicer, sharper lines that again are gonna make it look more like actual strands of cloth. There we go. Gotta be very careful not to overdo it though, because sometimes when you overdo things and you add too much detail, the elements become a little bit too noisy, too complicated. So for instance, here with my trim dynamic, I might be tempted to select this guy and just like flatten out a couple of the areas. We've talked about this before. They're like the rest areas. Like you don't want to have things everywhere. There should be certain areas where there's not a lot of things. Now let's definitely turn on the red rock. There we go. Yeah, I think the bandages look okay now. Go here. A little bit of detail there. Yeah, I like that. That looks good. I don't think we really need to add a texture, like a cloth texture. I mean, you can do it if you want. But the thing is, since this is such a small object, like you probably will see it like at this distance. I'm thinking about, I think I mentioned it yesterday, I'm playing Elden Ring. And in a lot of RPGs and games, when you get an object, sometimes you don't see the object in the overworld or with the character. But you can go into the inventory and you see some very nice renders with a little bit of lore and stuff. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm going for right here, right? So trying to make sure it looks like there's some sort of information here. I'm gonna flatten this right over there. And there we go. Let's go into the skull now, because the skull and the ring in general definitely needs some cleanup. So I'm gonna start cleaning up over here. And the way we can clean this up is we can just start adding a little bit more detail, right? We definitely, I think I'm gonna disable Dynamesh. We're not gonna change the silhouette anymore. So I'm gonna disable Dynamesh and give it one subdivision. So we're almost at 1,000,000 polygons. And with this subdivision, now it should be a little bit easier to sort of add this sort of elements. I want to keep it very, very loose, very sculptural, very organic, if you wish. So just like make these things flow into the ring. and then smooth them out. So we have this sort of like interesting tendrils there. Let's grab our diminustander. And carve a little bit carefully right there. Someone mentioned in the comments if we're going to be doing retopology. Yes, of course we're going to do retopology. I think we cheated last time when we did the, what's the word? What were we doing? What was the asset that we did that we cheated on? The sword, right? The sword was a little bit of a cheat because we used decimation master and stuff. Now we're actually going to do it. I'm going to grab my clay buildup and let's start adding a couple of more details here. So there's some really nice like holes that skulls usually have, like right about there. It's I think it's one of the places in which like the facial nerves go through. So I'm just gonna add it. There we go. Now let's go to the teeth. And let's start building this sort of like little details here. Those details are going to be really important because when you 3D print something, you lose a lot of detail. A lot of detail. Because on the way like 3D printing works, there's a light, right, that shines. And depending what areas the light is touching, those are the areas that are going to be hardened. And in resin 3D printing, I'm talking about resin 3D printing. So one thing that I've learned this last couple of years that I've been doing some 3D printing on my own is that you definitely want to like sculpt harder or like with more depth than you would normally do for like games and stuff, because the resin is going to lose a lot of that definition. And you actually do this for like traditional sculpture as well. I do remember my sculpting teacher telling us a little bit about that, like how he carves sometimes wrinkles and stuff a little bit harder than you might think, because he knows that with the lost wax process and all that stuff, you're going to lose some of that definition. There we go. Now I'm going to turn off the bandages for just a second so that I can focus on the shape of the skull. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to see the skull without the bandages. There we go. Now, I don't really care about the things that are going to be under the bandages, right? Like, do we really need to sculpt them? No, of course not. Because, well, they're hidden. Now, let's go here. The jawline, we definitely need to do a little bit more work. It has this sort of like shoe or like two little arms thing going on right about here. And then it goes like straight down. So I'm going to try to... Like, I do want to have this like joined together with the lower part, but not in like a super difficult way. There we go. And then down here, we're also gonna have our teeth. Again, not really worried about like anatomical precision right now. It's more about the cool factor, right? You get a little bit of a ridge here. Soften some of this with the smooth brush. I do this a lot where I like see something on another part of the object and just jump there. So all of those details, all of those like lines and stuff. Let's just fix them a little bit. Just trying to make sure that all of the curves are as nice and as straight as possible. We're still missing the logo from my villain. We're gonna add that later. Now on this guy is right here, since these are also tendrils, I definitely want them to do a very similar thing where they kind of go on the bottom part right there. So it needs to feel like they're coming from a very similar like way as the other ones. There's an interesting curve like up here on the top. And let's just smooth things out. Now here, for instance, you can see that they're merging. Do we want them to merge or do we want them to go into the eyes? I think I kind of want them to go into the eyes. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna carve in like the union, right? So make sure it looks like they're going in rather than just merging. Okay. That's important. We always want to use lines and definition to convey specifically the kind of like connection that we want to have. Same for this one's right here. It's important that we give it a little bit more support so it's very, very clear that they're not part of the skull rather than they're going into the skull. Now the curvature here, I don't love it, so I'm gonna use my move brush, as you can see there, to fix it a little bit. And there we go. Let's go here, remove Dynamesh, give it a couple of subdivisions, and then now with the subdivisions, I'm just gonna start like sculpting the general details of the thing. Now, I've mentioned this plenty of times, but I'm never gonna be tired of saying this. Every single thing can require as much time as you guys want to give it. This one I would consider it to be like a sort of like a quick sculpt. That's why it's taking us like it's gonna be like what, like 2 hours probably. It was half an hour yesterday, and then it's half an hour today. So in total, it's probably gonna be like 2 hours after texturing and stuff. I wouldn't expect any of my artists to do this sort of thing in 2 hours. Like if I'm giving this task to someone in my team, or if I'm hired to do something, I would say a good number would be like 10 to 12 hours probably. Of course, people can do it faster, but usually between like coming back and forth with the client and changes and modifications and stuff, you're probably like looking at like a full day of work, probably like a full day of work for the production of this asset. Now, there's one thing. I'm not sure if this happens in your countries, guys, but here in Mexico, we have a really, really bad like work ethic thing where people expect you to work at like inhuman speeds, and you should always like be busy and busy. And it has always surprised me because in other countries such as like the U.S., I've worked for several U.S. clients, and they're usually very chill about the times. Like they of course won't like no one likes anyone to be a slacker, right? But if you say, hey, this guy's gonna take me like this ring, it's gonna take me 10-12 hours, they're like, okay, fine, yeah, go for it. Because they understand that if you're saying that it will take that long, it's because you're gonna do an amazing job, right? So yeah, there we go. Let me go to this like tendrils now. And you can see we have another one over here, like this small one. And again, just to kind of like keep everything in the same sort of visual language, I'm just gonna give it volume here. And this one kind of like loses itself like up there. That's fine. We can kind of like blend it out like that. Shouldn't be that much of a problem. Cool. So yeah, now we can start adding a little bit of detail, I think. So I'm gonna be using the orb brushes. Someone asked about this ones a couple of videos ago. I've already mentioned them, but there's this orb brushes, very, very famous. If you just look for orb brushes instead of Google, you're gonna find this one by Michael Vicente. He was or still is, I'm not sure, a Blizzard employee. So he has this very like stylized effect. And there's a couple of ones like this one right here, which really, really cool, which gives a lot of texture. So here on my Lightbox, I have added them into my Zbrush installation folders. And here's my orb brushes. I have a couple of others as well, but here's like the orb rock noise. And I do want to add like this sort of like noise to the skull. Now, is all of this noise going to be visible on the 3D print? Probably not. But I'm just going to add it here because it looks cool. Yeah, as I mentioned, like the 3D print will lose some of these details. So all of this like super fine detail, you might not be able to to see it at the end. It's a nice texture, and if we're doing like a render, I think that's also going to look quite nice. Let's go to the jaw. And now I do have one other. I'm gonna use this one, which is rocks. This is not from the kit that I just talked about, but I really like it because it's sort of like erosion. It's pretty cool. So I'm gonna add a couple of these effects. I unfortunately I really don't remember where I got this alpha from or where I bought it. It was so long ago. It was when I was still a student, and I've just been using this ones for so long. There we go. So it's just like some corrosion, right? Because it's supposed to be like a death ring, and especially like it gets like darker, more intense as we go closer to the center here. There we go. That's it. That's pretty much it. So for the logo, you probably guys have seen, like, again, not super original, but I think it's called the Eye of Horus. Yeah, it's this one right here. So it's like a variation of the Eye of Horus that I'm kind of like using, and instead of having it kind of like sideways, it's very centered. So I'm gonna try to draw it here on top of the skull. And now I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do it with a mask. So I'm gonna go with a mask, and I know that's gonna be like the center of the eye. And then we have like the upper eyelid. Here I'm definitely gonna turn on symmetry. So it's like the upper eyelid. I'm gonna use negative mask to kind of like trim this down. There we go. Oh, that looks like a mustache. Okay, let's try something else. It's like this. I like the lower one. There we go. That's a little bit better. So it's like that. Like that. Perfect. And then it has there's 6 elements in my world. Well, not 6 elements. There's like 6 elemental forces, if you wish, which are the typical ones. It's earth, fire, water, air, and then light and no, I don't call them light and dark because they're not supposed to be moral. They're called positive and negative energy. So, and again, it's not negative in the sense that it's bad. It's just like the opposite of the other one, right? So those 6 are represented by sort of like this, like elements. Kind of like a sun. And then there's a couple of extra symbols here, but those I'm gonna keep secret because those are for my players, and if they see this video, they're gonna be like, oh, now I get it. So those represent, actually, they're asymmetrical. There's gonna be like something like that, and then a small one right there. It keeps it balanced. It keeps the pattern or the thing balanced, but it represents something important to the story. Now I'm gonna remove the eye there at the center just to give it a little bit more depth. I'm gonna invert this, and there's a couple of things we can use, but I like using this deformation, and then there's one called inflate. And if we inflate in, as you can see, this is gonna inflate it in, or we can inflate out. Like either one of those works. I'm trying to think which one is better. I think I'm gonna go out for this one. And that's gonna have our nice little decal right there. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. There's a lot of noise in here. We can just like smooth it out. I'm not too worried about those elements because they're not even gonna be visible anywhere. But yeah, this would be like a really nice final sculpt, I would say, for our character. I do think this tentacle looks kind of weird going there, so I'm gonna keep the curvature and make it go out. Because when I see it from the front, let me go back so that we have symmetry turned on. See how this curve looks really weird? So I'm gonna use the same curve of the tentacle to give it a nice little like thing here. And then if we need to correct it a little bit more, even if I need to go like outer or like further out than I thought I would, that's fine. Sometimes those kind of things like work better if you just commit to them. So let's go there. And all those groups and stuff, that's also going to be like super helpful for the textures, because we're going to make this look like a rusted damaged metal. It looks really good. There's this I learned from another client that was doing some rings as well, and he did like a very cool skull ring, and he showed me the final result, and he used some chemical elements, chemical properties to chemically burn the metal. And it creates like this sort of like a rust effect, but it's not rust, so it's not damaging to the metal. Makes it look really cool. I think I'm gonna add a couple of like lines here. These are just like final lines to give a little bit more detail to the whole thing. And there we go. There we go. Even this stone here, we can just like flatten, or I'll polish it a little bit more. Especially make it feel like it's actually like being whole, like barely hold together by the skull. So like it's very like form fitting. So there we go. Yeah. That's it. Let's turn on all of the materials and let's take a final look at this before we call the sculpture done. So the jaw is just missing the gold. Let's go mRGB, color, fill object. There we go. So yeah, as you can see, guys, this is a really good preview of how this thing is gonna look at the end. Not bad, right? Not freaking bad, I would say. So I am gonna probably record one more video today. Yes, I do think I still have a little bit of time. So tomorrow, or the next video for this series, we're gonna be taking a look at retopology, like how to, I wouldn't say like super quickly, but how to quickly retopologize this thing and get it ready for our final part, which would be texturing, UVs and texture. So yeah, hang on tight, and I'll see you back on the next one. Bye bye, and we are out.